Now, though, let's meet Harold Hillman. Now, he migrated to New Zealand 15 years ago for what he thought would be a 3-year stint with Fonterra and then go back to New York. Well, the rest, as they say, is history. He's now the managing director of Sigmoid Curve Consulting, and he's been in Auckland since 2003. He became a Kiwi in 2008, so congratulations on 10 years of being a Kiwi, Harold.
Thank you, Trudi.
And he joins us now to talk, well, about workplace politics. The behaviours, interactions in the workplace are driven by power and authority. You might say that office politics are, well, strategies that people play to gain advantage over others, whether that's personally or for a cause. It's rife, it's awful. And what's the saying? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, Harold. Are workplace politics or office politics inevitable? Is it something you've just got to deal with?
They are, Trudi. Politics it just comes with the sort of the art of two or more people existing around a common purpose and trying to keep people focused. And so sometimes the word politics takes on a negative connotation. We actually, in the corporate world, make a distinction between someone who's politically savvy and someone who's political. A person who's politically savvy is someone who can rise above the fray, be aware of the politics that are going on, but not get immersed down into the fray of it, who can remain relatively objective and influential, but what we call above the line. Someone who's considered political has sort of lost the plot and are usually sort of honing in on personal gain or what's best for their team as opposed to the organization. So we do, particularly as leaders and executives grow into bigger positions, we try to take a look at whether or not a person is politically savvy or political. And if it's political, that's typically going to be a big derailer.
I agree. So as a leadership coach, are you saying that it's wise for a general office worker to learn how to play political games early on and when they start their career?
Certainly in terms of being above the line. It ultimately, your impact at work is defined by your ability to influence people, to think a certain way or to take certain actions. And in the process of building influence, you meet with people, you try to get them on your side. It is important to... when we talk about politics being above the line, we usually think about that as good stakeholder management and just being across key people, making sure that people understand what your motives and your objectives are, that they're not building unwarranted theories about you. So it does require face time, what some people might consider to be kissing up or even worse.
Brown nosing.
Brown nosing and those things. But it is important to make time for people to get to know who's in the right positions and those things, but in a way that really is about just making sure that people understand who you are, what your objectives are, those types of things.
Yeah, and that's how leaders are established. I get it. But I'm a firm believer in being a good person, a kind person, not burning any bridges.
Yes.
But what differentiates good office politics from bad?
Yeah, it turns bad when we all lose perspective on what we're striving for. And so that's one of the reasons why leadership is so important around whether politics are playing themselves out in a positive way or a negative way. Bad politics are when we are now going after either personal gain or we see our team's objective to be bigger than the organization's. When you lose perspective on the bigger picture, it can get quite interesting and intriguing in terms of politics, particularly when there's limited resources, limited dollars, limited people. Then you've really got to get people focused on the bigger picture and what we're striving for in common. Otherwise, it can get very political as people are vying for dollars, side, those types of things that matter.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of part of you when someone's doing extra well at work and really storming it, and you're thinking, oh, it didn't happen to me, and the green-eyed little monster comes for a sec, and then you go, actually, no, I'll celebrate their success, because usually it happens, good things happen to good people, right?
That's right.
And I'm a big believer in higher learning, so if you want to be a leader at work or, rise above, you have to go and do some leadership coaching or watch some YouTube videos like TEDx, which you present on. And I'm a bit of a Tony Robbins fan, so I will go and watch something online from him or jump to Australia and go one of his conferences. Is that what you think people should do, more learning?
I really do. It is about, I truly encourage leaders, and particularly senior leaders, to really know what their true north is. The author Bill George wrote the book True North, and it was really about being able to be clear about your own values, your own stakes in the ground, those things that really matter, because they're ultimately going to be tested. People will follow you largely because of your character. So it is important to hone in around those things that matter, and those things that you stand for and don't stand for. So I do believe that certainly educating our leaders, helping them to develop around their own ethos, their own personal ethos, is important.
It is 12:40. We're talking with Harold Hillman, leadership coach, and you would have had your fair share of politics,
Yes.
Your own personal experience of living what you say was an inauthentic life as a closeted gay military officer. A very
right.
interesting reading, and congratulations on, coming out and not, keeping it under the quilt anymore. It would have changed your life.
It did change my life, Trudi, and I wrote a book called Fitting In, Standing Out, Finding Your Authentic Voice at Work. Part of politics is going into an organization and figuring out, where you can be safe and what's required for you not to become a target. And unfortunately, I, like so many other people, turned the volume down on my whole personality in the interest of fitting in. And that, again, might be construed as somewhat political. And I'll give them what they need in terms of where you then sort of shut your own self off from being able to contribute or bring perspective that may be different. And so it really does load on. When we talk about people being political, it's stepping away from their own personal sense of grounding in order to just sort of adjust or flex around what the organization needs. And that's stepping away from your center. So I learned at a very personal level that being yourself and being your authentic self will disturb the peace. But that's required. People really do gravitate towards, I found that out personally.
Authenticity.
I found that out very personally.
100% agree with you. What do you say to someone that's listening now that is getting squashed in the workplace, being bullied perhaps, or, they're ready to throw in the towel because they think there's no way out and they're just best to leave?
Yeah, look, you have to really think about whether or not the forces that are working against good in an organization are deep and systemic and cultural. We'd like to think that our own behavior can make a difference. But if you honestly do believe that you're fighting against a strong tide, and particularly if the leadership in the organization isn't prepared to put stakes in the ground around ethical versus unethical behavior, you really should think about where, around your own personal engagement, you can contribute in a culture that thrives with, what I would consider to be more positive values and things like that.
So what strategies could a person develop?
I just think that it's a matter of being objective and open about what your agenda is. If you really are pushing into the storm and disturbing the peace, be transparent, reasonably transparent. Don't have people making inferences about what your intentions are. Be clear about those. Above the line behavior typically is going to draw more people towards you. It'll make your leadership more compelling. So I would just say that if you're fighting against the storm, give it your best. Be objective, be reasonably transparent, but also be realistic in terms of whether or not the culture is going to support your behavior.
I felt your stage presence then. Obviously, I've seen you doing some TEDx stuff and some talks. That was very powerful then.
Well, thank you, Trudi.
It's lovely to have you in studio. We're talking with Harold Hillman, leadership coach, author, business commentator. What are the signs that bad office politics might evolve into something worse, like corruption or unethical stuff going down?
Yeah, it is. Typically, when an organization is under stress, meaning particularly bad financial performance, that's when you will usually see people pulling away from what we call the whole and reverting to type around the parts. So you want to be mindful that when an organization is under stress, you're going to get people who will sometimes revert to what we might consider to be below the line or political types of behaviors to protect turf and those types of things. You also want to, an organization is more at risk if the leadership isn't strong. So if the senior most leaders in the organization aren't taking a stand on values that make a difference, pushing into tough issues that require them to make tough calls on some people leaving. We do, in 2018, fortunately, in organizations, we tend to reinforce and promote people not only on what they do, but how they do it. and that's making a big difference. An organization that doesn't have a strong values platform or an ethical framework is likely to stray into that area a lot more than organizations that do have defined values frameworks.
Yes, and human resources departments and someone leadership to go and talk to, and those systems in place to help out in those situations.
That's right. It really does make a difference.
Well, 10 years a Kiwi and originally from Washington. I guess you would have been, coming of age and through the 60s and 70s in a very diverse social fabric that defined America.
That's right.
Living in New Zealand must be completely different.
It is. Now, Trudi, it's intriguing to me. I actually believe that I gained more of a global perspective on the world by moving to New Zealand. And I know that we sometimes joke about being the last bus stop on Earth and
hidden down here.
But I tell you what, it really, moving to New Zealand and seeing the world from the vantage of 4.5 million people living in the Southern Hemisphere, it actually opened my eyes around, new perspectives. I saw how some of my assumptions about people in different parts of the world were probably a bit unwarranted. New Zealand has actually helped me become a more global citizen.
Well, that's good to hear, and nice to know that you firmly consider your life to be lived out here for the rest of your days.
For the rest of my days, I'm a Kiwi.
Good. And have you encountered any racism from, you're around New Zealand? Because there is a little bit of it. It's a bit of an undertone around New Zealand.
Yeah, look, I haven't personally. I think it correlates in terms of the sort of my social circle and those types of things. There's always going to be ugliness in any society. But what I will say about New Zealand is that I find the discourse to be of a degree of civility that I think is admirable. I think that we do push through issues, and the strife, sort of the visceral, emotive strife around, is in a very positive way, not a part of how we talk, how we deal with each other and push through differences in New Zealand. I find it much more positive and constructive, actually.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And a final word for someone that's listening now that knows they have a leader within them, but they are not getting the chance at work. Perhaps they don't have the right dress, manner, look. What advice would you give to someone listening now going, I know it's within me and I just need to unleash it? What would you say?
I would just say find your voice. That leadership is about taking a position, having a point of view, bringing it with edge. That people who are disengaged at work are typically disengaged because they have stopped bringing their point of view or their perspective. And I don't care what rank you're at. I don't care whether you're just, you're 19 years old and just working in a position perhaps where you don't have a leadership role, or the CEO for that matter. The idea is bring your voice. It makes a difference.
Absolutely. 13 minutes to 1. Thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Trudi.
And the key there is being kind. Like I say, don't burn bridges. Just be nice. Go to drharoldhillman.com if you want to know more about Harold's work.